You were talking about the Adam and Eve parts of us earlier. And how they go back and forth for a really long time. So I guess if a person is experiencing that for a really long time and just kind of at the mercy of the back and forth, I guess they don't really control anything. But I just wonder if there's something or what it is that keeps that Eve part protected, especially in our culture that's so, we're not living in the times of the New Testament,
The kids, they're starting their life. They're not sitting and reading the Bible. One is looking for his next Spider-Man toy. The other is looking for her next Elsa toy. It's their initiation into the physical world and all that it has to offer. And there are a lot of things that can bring them joy and happiness and comfort. And they're wonderful things. And then they're going to go to school. And, it's an invisible competition there. It's quite vulturous and vicious. But they do it with laughter and games and this and that. And then soon the reprimands are going to come in. An A will turn to a B, and then C, and then D, and then the emotions they never had and they never knew, all of a sudden they're going to emerge. And as they become a bit more mature, age-wise, they're going to push back, they're going to have doubts, they're going to have fears. And let's say they get to be 30, 35. From the age 0 to about 30, 35, they've kind of lived a very physical life. There's nothing wrong with it. Maybe they get married, maybe they have a few relationships. All the things that they're engaged in and engaged with, they become their psychological narratives through which identity is formed, meaning is formed. All of a sudden, there is an opening where they begin to ask big questions. It's not like once they begin to ask these, existential questions, the who am I, the what am I, that the Adam part is simply going to walk away. Remember, every part of you that has been inside you for a while, they're going to fight to survive. They're not going to go away easily. Just because somebody goes to therapy, for example, and they have a new insight, it doesn't mean all of a sudden the memories of their father or their mother or their ex or their child, all of a sudden they're going to evaporate. Survival of the fittest, it's not just biological, it's emotional as well. Eve is not going to survive. Eve needs to be pushed again and again and again and again. And the more Eve, this creative part of you gets pushed, and the more it is alive, the less Adam has a chance to make choices. But there's going to be a good amount of conflict, fear and doubt, good amount of anger. I remember sitting in our gatherings. We were friends, Merdad and I were roommates. And sometimes, Hussein would just look at him in a strange way. Strange in the sense that you could feel that it was a moment that just belonged to him and Hussein. And I couldn't have that moment. I wanted to, but it just wasn't inside me. I knew it. I couldn't feel the lessons. And so envy and jealousy would get in. And I would leave angry, envious, jealous. There are so many things that need to be overcome. See, it's one thing when you become contaminated with, say, ideas at the age of 16 or 17. And then you stay with these ideas till you're like about 40. That's about 23, 24 years of staying with something. That's a very long and intimate relationship. It doesn't matter how much and how often you fear or how often you have doubts. None of those things matter. It's a relationship from which you can't divorce. The only thing it can do is just make you feel bad once in a while. You can feel incompetent. You can feel useless. You can feel meaningless. But none of those things really matter. It's not like you can walk away. I've lived here for about 40 years. It doesn't make me American. If anything, it makes me more Persian as I get older. I can't divorce my culture. I can't divorce my heritage. You walked into this stuff when you were 16, 17. And add to it the fact that, your temperament. If you were to go back, you went to Waldorf. That, and you have a certain type of parents. You put all of these things together, it makes you ready for these ideas. Not ready perhaps to cook them, not ready to apply them, but you receive them. If these ideas are inside you like cancer, you can have a good time for a day. But you're going to be reminded by this disease that don't be too happy. Your life is going to be taken away. Pain is coming to you. You're going to start screaming. You're going to throw up. You can't walk. You can't shower. You can't do anything. If your question is, well, your question isn't that.
I think.
when let's say that I love my father, let's just say. I respect him. I love him. And let's say he dies. I get a message tonight that your father has passed away. And I may scream. I'm not quite sure how I will react, because I know that for the longest time I had this idea that, I'm not going to feel as much. And then when Hussein died, I kind of just sat and cried. And I couldn't continue my conversation with my sister, who, gave me the news. And so let's say the message comes that my father has passed. Well, if I go to Eckhart Tolle and say, so Eckhart, my father died and I feel miserable, what do I need to do? The truth is, I want my father back. He can tell me, well, be patient, everybody dies. Kind of like the Aristotle and his syllogism. All men are mortal. Mortals die. Amir is mortal, therefore Amir will die. That may be fine in a philosophy class on a quiz given to you by some useless instructor. But it's not going to help me when my father dies. It's not a syllogism. And there is no remedy to crying, to grief, to loss, to having your heart broken. I can't fight with life. I can't bring God down here and put him on the stands and question him. The only answer is, life is unjust. Just sit. And hopefully time will not take as long to make you forget and to numb you a little. So instead of crying 5 hours a day, you'll cry 1 hour a day, and then an hour every week, and then an hour every month. And then you just think about your father every century or so.
Is there any way around that where you don't forget? You don't want to forget?
Well, if the only way you can not forget something is by remembering it, and the way you remember is by poking yourself, which means that you're going to create a good amount of pain. You remember Tamar? I remember she was going to Malaysia and she was having this goodbye party. I don't know if I told you the story or not. I don't even know that if you were there.
I think I was there.
You were there?
Mm-hmm.
So she had asked, I think, with her father if I could just go in there for like 5-10 minutes, say goodbye. And I said, sure. I think I went there about 6 o'clock at night. They lived in Roseville or Rockland. And then as I was walking to knock on the door, I heard people giggling, and they had a pool table in one of the rooms and they were playing pool. And so I knocked, I don't know if Tamar opened the door on someone else, but I go in and she was having a good time with her friends. And then she sees me. And then she looks at me and she says, I don't think I can have fun anymore now that you're here. And I think if you were to tackle your question within that particular context, how could Tamar remember all the things we talked about in the classroom and in the quad and a few times that we had gatherings at the house, when she's playing pool with her friends, when she belongs to a culture that is unreflective, when in the morning she's going to Malaysia to have some fun? There is no space for remembrance. You need someone to come in who has an image of sorts, image in the sense that you have seen him in the class and the way he speaks, they're not happy thoughts. And when you've been in the classroom enough times, you realize, well, every time you go there, something about it just changes. And the instructor doesn't even need to be in the classroom. You've gone 10 minutes early, you're just there to get yourself a seat. And then you kind of say, I wonder what the class is going to be today. Is it going to be as dark and gloomy as the class we had on Tuesday, or is it going to be somewhat lighter? Is he going to be wearing a white shirt or a black shirt? Should I ask him my question after class or before class? Should I tell him I hate him now or maybe like a month from now? And eventually what happened with her was that I think we were supposed to get together for coffee. She had some questions. And she calls me and says, Amir, I know we were supposed to get together today, but I don't think I want to see you anymore. I say, okay, that's fine. But don't you want to know why? I said, no, but you can tell me if you want to. She says, yeah, I want to tell you. Okay, what is it? You're not good for me. Your ideas, your philosophy of life is ruining my life. I said, that's fine. And I heard many, many years later that she became a very devoted Christian, which is fine. Cassie, one of the nice things about having your own life, having your own family, is that the intensity that exists in the relationship that you have with your father and with your mother, all of a sudden they lessen, the intensity lessens. Instead of talking to them every day for 5 hours, now you talk to them every day for an hour. Then it gets to be once a day, then maybe once a week. Now you may think it's bad, and it may be, on some level. But the benefit of having your own family is this. When your parents pass, you're not going to go completely crazy. Having your own family saves you from going through this agonizing moment that could lead to paralysis for the rest of your life. There is nothing wrong with forgetting when it allows you, when you forget, it allows you to wash dishes, to vacuum the house, to make food for your family, to have a nice outing with your husband or your wife, to go to the park with your kids, to go and laugh with your mom and your dad, to have some, gathering with your friends. It's good to forget. Not all the time, just sometimes. If you were to kind of force yourself or manipulate or coerce, create environments where you just constantly forget, then you'll be useless to yourself, your family, and other people. But there is no reason for pain to be there all the time. If you're working with someone like Gurdjieff, it's very, 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 very different. Ouspensky has a story about him asking Gurdjieff, "Are we going to have a gathering tomorrow night?" And Gurdjieff would say, "No, I don't think we're going to have a gathering. I need to go back to, I don't know, Moscow." And Ouspensky would say, okay, then, maybe then, next time. He says, "Yeah, next time." And then he would say that, we wake up in the morning and Gurdjieff called me and said, "Let's go to the coffee shop." And we stay there for 10 hours. And then all of a sudden he looks at me and says, "Peter Ivanovich, why don't you call a few people? Let's have a gathering tonight." Well, it's a Saturday. It's 7:30 at night. Some of the people have dates. Some are hanging out with their wives or husbands. Some have plans. And he said, later on I came to realize that there's a reason why he does it this way. If people are hungry enough, they will sacrifice everything to go be with Gurdjieff. I think all of us should consider ourselves to be very lucky that we are mediocre people with mediocre ideas and mediocre lives, and not too much is expected of us, that we can have the best of both worlds. There's nothing wrong with living a fantasy life, having all these ridiculous assumptions about ourselves. I mean, Cassie, do you know I have a PhD in philosophy? Can't I live in the fantasy that I am a doctor? Yeah? Do I really need to have a Socrates around me all the time making me feel bad? That my degree means nothing? That I am incompetent, I'm a fool?